This is part of a series of videos that take a look at solution evaluation. In this specific video, we'll be taking a look at a scoring spreadsheet or scoring matrix that's called an IFAT matrix. And the specific learning objectives will be to first take a high-level review of different ways to compare alternatives, whether it's solutions or projects or really any decision that requires evaluating many different alternative choices. We'll then describe the four elements that make up the scoring matrix known as an IFAT matrix and why those attributes are chosen for solution evaluation. And then finally, we'll provide some examples of how an IFAT matrix can be used to help with tollgate reviews and help with some of the questions that decision makers will have just before the solution implementation plan is approved and solutions are implemented. All right, I've cleaned up my screen just a little bit. Here's where we're at. We've been working in a DMAIC style process improvement project, and at the end of the analyze phase, we've identified a number of root causes. We talked about how after those root causes have been identified, in the improve phase, we're going to go about a broad to narrow approach, where first, we try to create a large list of possible solutions to each root cause using a variety of tools. And so for each root cause, I'm generating many solution ideas. To come up with that broad list of solutions, it took more than just brainstorming. We used a variety of techniques to come up with the broad list. We have earlier videos that describe how to create this broad list. Now that is tiring, and we also took a look at how to manage some of the brain drain or some of the fatigue factors that teams have at the beginning of the improved phase in generating this large list. We've got the large list now. How do we narrow it down to our best of best final solutions? How do we narrow down that list? It's all about really solution evaluation. And there are a variety of ways of taking a look at many different alternatives and coming up with a few specific choices that you're going to go with. Let's take a look at a few other than the IFAT matrix, the focus of this video. There are a variety of other techniques other than scoring spreadsheets that can be used to help evaluate a large list of alternatives. One technique that doesn't require really any data is having a key person, whether they've got authority in the room or unique knowledge in the room or charisma or ability to debate their thought better than others. You can have one key person make the choice for the group. Now, most organizations prefer something that is a little bit more scientific method or data-driven in its approach, but that one key individual is an option. A pairwise comparison is one technique where each solution is compared to the other, and then we systematically go through weeding out until we found the few best solutions. It's a very straightforward approach, but it can be quite time consuming if you've got many different solution choices to choose from, and the group in the room is not familiar with all of the details behind each solution. Similar to pairwise comparison is comparing each solution to a gold standard or a known standard or something that in the past has been successful. And then you can place that into a plus minus column matrix we sometimes call a Pew matrix. A more systematic approach than your traditional scoring spreadsheets is something called analytical hierarchy process, a weighted scoring spreadsheet approach towards decision making. And then some of the advanced concepts that are covered in our Black Belt curriculum and other data analysis programs are conjoint analysis and design of experiments. At the top end, we are looking at very simple techniques. At the bottom end, we are looking at very complex techniques for doing decision making based on multiple alternatives. Right in the middle, sort of the sweet spot, it's our traditional scoring spreadsheet. And my preferred scoring spreadsheet when it comes to possible solutions is something called an IFAT matrix. I'm pulling information now from the Business Process Improvement Workbook, and the Excel spreadsheet version of the diagram that I'll be drawing on is also available on the course materials website. In the front end of the improve phase, we've come up with a variety of different solutions. And those ideas are listed out as row values in a spreadsheet that I like to call an IFAT matrix. Now in this example, I've just got 3 listed, but in reality, typically this is a technique that's used when you've got 10 to 25 solutions. If you've got more than 25, I tend to do a multi-level filtering, similar to the way that we did CTQ filtering and stakeholder filtering. All of those are located in earlier videos from this series. But let's say that we've got not 3 ideas, but we've got 10 to 25 ideas, and they've been listed out as row values. In an IFAT matrix, for each of those solution or ideas, we're going to evaluate the solution on 4 key elements: impact, feasibility, acceptance, and timing. We'll give it a score, typically 1 to 3, 1 to 5. I actually kind of prefer the 1 to 4 scale because it forces a person to either choose a little bit more negative or more positive value. You can't choose something right in the middle on a 1 to 4 scale. This particular example, though, has scale values of 1 to 5. And you'll operationally define what's the difference between a 1 and a 2 and a 3, a 3 and a 4, a 4 and a 5. You'll have that set up before the team works through the IFAT matrix. Let's now take a look at what each one of these elements means, and then why I chose those elements for solution evaluation. The first element is something called impact. And what I'm looking for in impact is for the particular solution that's on the board that we're evaluating, what type of benefit will it have to the actual future state performance of the process? If you remember, all processes can be measured. Their performance could be put on a speedometer needle, where in current state we're at a low setting, and our goal is to try to move the needle of performance to a higher value in future state. For impact, I'm scoring on how much will the needle move if we were to implement that solution. Will we get a 50% improvement? 100% improvement? How much will the needle move? We operationally define it, and this is an estimate or a guess. We have not yet implemented this solution, so we're not 100% sure, but it's how much will the needle of performance move, and then we give it a score. The next attribute that we'll be taking a look at in solution determination is feasibility. And feasibility is all about the cost and time needed to implement that solution. Is this something that would only require a weekend of effort by 2 of your maintenance professionals at a cost of a couple $100s? Then it's pretty feasible then. Or is this something where the solution is going to require 4,000 people hours at a cost of $2.3 million to implement this new inventory management system? Not very feasible. We score it again on a 1 to 5 scale, where lower numbers mean less feasible, higher numbers mean more feasible. The third attribute, acceptance, is all about that Meyer model equation. You remember Q times A equals E, where E is your effective business result, Q is the quality of the solution or the technical robustness of the solution. And what we're looking at in the acceptance is how much user acceptance or buy-in is there for this particular idea. For this particular solution, is there a lot of user acceptance, a lot of buy-in? Then it'll score high. If there's a lot of change resistance to this solution, then it'll score low. Timing is about how long we think it will take to harvest the benefits from this solution. It will create a positive impact on our customers or on the organization. Is this something that after it's implemented, we'll start to see benefits the very next day? scores high? Or is this something where it'll take a couple of months before we'll actually be able to see the positive aspects? Or is this something where even after we implement it, it still will require another 12 or 18 months because we're waiting on another project to be completed that also has to be in place before we can harvest those benefits? It would score low then. For each of the four variables, I have the team argue the differences in the room together. This is not a spreadsheet that you send off separately, have each person score on their own, and then you bring the results in and average. That technique can be used, but the concern I have with it is that frequently you'll get something called convergence to the mean. When you have people score in isolation and then average the results, all of the solutions tend to converge on a central number. And for an IFAT matrix, you want spread in the solution results. I know that frequently we are in a domain-based project, we want to reduce variation, but not when it comes to the scores for an IFAT matrix. We want some of the scores to be high, and that tells us that those are really impactful solutions. And scores that are low, well, that just means that the solution was nice, but it's probably not going to be implemented. It's for that reason also that not only do I have the team in the room arguing the differences there in real time, but I also multiply the results out to create more spread. Now, there is one exception to this. If your scoring scale includes the value 0, so if you say a 0 to 5 scale, I typically do not multiply unless that attribute is such a critical attribute that if it did score that low, we absolutely should throw this solution out. Sometimes safety is like that. But in most cases, if I have a scoring scale that includes 0, I don't multiply, I instead add. I prefer multiplication though because it does create more spread in your final results. Let me walk through a couple of examples now of how I use the IFAT matrix to help me and my team, and more importantly, the sponsor during a tollgate review at the end of the improve phase. Frequently, the sponsor will come into that tollgate review saying, well, I'm feeling very pressured. The corporate or the central part of the organization is asking me to come up with a really big bang solution, and it needs to happen by the next quarter as part of the earnings call statements. Well, what I'm hearing then is it sounds like, sponsor, what you want is something that has large impact, and we need to show or we need to choose solutions that we can harvest those benefits in a short period of time. We've taken a look at that in the IFAT matrix, and I could resort those solutions based on those two important criteria. Sometimes it's a little bit different. The sponsor will say, we have to show that we're committed to continuous improvement, but I don't have a budget and they didn't give me a budget. In that situation, you might want to choose solutions that have high levels of user acceptance and high levels of feasibility, low cost, low people hour type solution. I like the IFAT matrix because the variables that we're using to assess the solutions are frequently the variables that your sponsor is thinking of. An IFAT matrix, though, is not the only thing that I will use for solution evaluation. These four variables are important to the sponsor, they're important to the organization. I also, though, need to, whatever solutions make it through my IFAT matrix. So maybe we started with 25 solutions to begin with, and IFAT has narrowed it down to the top 5. There is one final scoring spreadsheet that I need to work through after the IFAT matrix, and that's to address risk. We have not yet done a risk exercise on these few most important solutions. And I'll use a separate scoring spreadsheet for that. It's called Quick FEMA, and we have a separate video on that. The IFAT matrix, though, it is a great tool for solution evaluation, and it allows my team to quickly get down to the vital few solutions and to make sure that those solutions address some of the concerns that my sponsor has.